was Electrician and Homeowner, Lesbian love story, Jade and Elena, sparks fly, hearts connect. The power went out at exactly 7:43 on a Thursday evening, plunging Elena's entire house into darkness just as she was about to give the most important presentation of her career to clients halfway across the world. Her laptop screen glowed like a lone star in the blackness, battery indicator flashing red, and panic seized her chest with iron fingers. She had 15 minutes before the video call, 15 minutes to save everything she had worked toward for the past 6 months, and the circuit breaker box might as well have been. Written in ancient hieroglyphs for all she understood about electrical systems. Her hands trembled as she called the first emergency electrician she could find. And when a warm, slightly amused voice answered and promised to be there in 10 minutes, Elena didn't know whether to cry with relief or scream with frustration at the universe for its terrible timing. Jade arrived in 8 minutes. Tool belt slung low on her hips, dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and grease smudged across one forearm, like war paint from whatever job she had abandoned to rush over. She moved through Elena's darkened house with the confidence of someone who understood the hidden language of wires and voltage, her flashlight beam cutting through shadows while Elena hovered anxiously behind her, babbling about the presentation and the clients and her dying laptop battery. Jade worked in focused silence, her capable hands moving with practiced precision through the breaker box, and when the lights suddenly blazed back to life with 4 minutes to spare, Elena felt something shift in her chest that had nothing to do with relief. She made her presentation in a daze, barely registering her clients' enthusiastic responses, because all she could think about was the electrician in her kitchen, who had refused payment and was now drinking the coffee Elena had insisted on making, her gray eyes crinkling at the corners when she smiled. If you believe in unexpected connections, in second chances at happiness, and in the courage it takes to open your heart when you least expect it, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to channel name. Your support means everything and helps us bring more stories of love and hope to people who need them. Elena couldn't stop thinking about Jade in the days that followed, which was ridiculous because they had spent barely 30 minutes together, and yet those gray eyes haunted her dreams and interrupted her thoughts. During meetings, she found herself inventing electrical problems that didn't exist, staring at perfectly functional light switches and wondering if flickering was normal, if that slight buzzing sound from the refrigerator warranted professional attention. She felt like a teenager again, nervous and uncertain and terrified of rejection, because it had been 3 years since her divorce from Marcus. 3 years of rebuilding herself from the shattered pieces of a marriage that had slowly suffocated her true identity. Coming out at 32 had been the hardest and most liberating thing she had ever done. But dating as a newly out woman in a small town felt like learning to walk on a tightrope while everyone watched and whispered. She had convinced herself that love could wait, that focusing on her career as a marketing consultant was enough, that she didn't need the complication of romance in her carefully reconstructed life. But then her kitchen outlet actually did stop working 2 weeks later, and when Jade arrived, Elena saw recognition flash across her face, followed by something that looked like pleasure. They talked while Jade worked, real conversation this time, and Elena learned that Jade had grown up in foster care, bouncing between homes until she aged out of the system at 18 with nothing but a battered toolbox. Her last foster father had given her a determination to build something solid from nothing. She had taught herself electrical work through YouTube videos and library books, earned her license through sheer stubborn persistence, and now ran her own small business that barely kept her afloat but gave her a pride she had never felt before. There was a guardedness in the way Jade spoke about her past, a careful distance she maintained, and Elena recognized it because she wore the same armor herself. They were both women who had learned that safety meant keeping people at arm's length, that vulnerability was a luxury neither could afford. The outlet repair took 20 minutes, but Jade stayed for 2 hours. And when she finally left, she hesitated at the door with her hand on the frame and asked if Elena might want to grab coffee sometime, her voice carefully casual in a way that made Elena's heart race. They went to the small cafe on Main Street 3 days later, sitting by the window where afternoon sunlight painted everything gold, and talked until the owner started stacking chairs on tables around them. Jade told stories that made Elena laugh until her sides ached. Stories about electrical disasters and stubborn homeowners. And the time she accidentally cut power to an entire city, blocked during a marriage proposal. Elena found herself sharing things she rarely spoke about. The loneliness of her marriage, the terror and relief of finally accepting her truth, the way her parents still couldn't quite look her in the eye. During family dinners, Jade listened with an intensity that made Elena feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced before. Really seen. Not just the polished professional version she showed the world, but the messy, uncertain, hopeful woman underneath. They began seeing each other regularly. Casual meetups that felt charged with possibility, and Elena felt herself falling in a way that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Jade would show up at her house after work, still in her uniform with dust in her hair, and they would cook dinner together in Elena's kitchen, moving around each other with increasing familiarity. Elena loved watching Jade's hands as she chopped vegetables, those same capable hands that rewired electrical panels and fixed broken things, now gentle and careful with a knife. They would sit on Elena's back porch as dusk settled purple and soft around them, talking about everything and nothing. And Elena would catch herself staring at the curve of Jade's jaw, the way her eyes reflected starlight, wondering what it would feel like to close the distance between them and finally kiss her. But fear kept her frozen because Elena's coming out had cost her almost everything. Her ex-husband had been cruel in the divorce, spreading rumors that painted her as unstable and deceptive. Half her friends had disappeared, uncomfortable with the truth of who she really was. Her business had suffered as clients quietly took their accounts elsewhere, and she had spent 2 years rebuilding her reputation and her client base from almost nothing. The thought of being visible with Jade, of walking through their small town holding hands, of facing the stares and whispers and judgment again, made her stomach twist with anxiety. She told herself she needed to move slowly, to be careful, to protect what she had worked so hard to rebuild. But really, she was just scared. Scared of losing everything again. Scared of wanting something so much that its absence would destroy her. Jade seemed to understand without Elena having to explain. Her own past having taught her about the various ways the world could reject you. They existed in a careful bubble, their relationship unspoken and undefined. Spending nearly every evening together, but never quite crossing the line into something official. Elena could feel Jade holding back too, a wariness in the way she sometimes pulled away when they got too close, as though she was waiting for Elena to realize she deserved better than someone who had grown up unwanted and unloved. They were two women circling each other, both longing for connection, but terrified of the vulnerability it required. And Elena knew this careful dance couldn't last forever, but didn't know how to make it stop. The turning point came on a rainy October evening when Elena's mother called to announce she was hosting Thanksgiving dinner and expected Elena to attend alone, her voice making it clear that bringing a friend would be inappropriate. Elena hung up feeling hollow and angry, and when Jade arrived 20 minutes later as planned, she could tell immediately that something was wrong. Elena tried to brush it off, to paste on a smile and pretend everything was fine. But Jade just looked at her with those knowing gray eyes and asked what she needed. And Elena, tired of being careful and scared and alone, finally broke and told her everything. She talked about her family's disappointment, about feeling like she was always choosing between her truth and their approval, about how exhausting it was to constantly weigh whether being herself was worth the cost. Jade listened without interruption, and when Elena finally ran out of words, she reached across the space between them and took Elena's hand, her thumb tracing gentle circles on Elena's palm. Jade told her that she understood fear, that she had spent her whole childhood feeling unwanted and her whole adult life trying to prove she deserved to take up space in the world. She said that meeting Elena had made her want to be brave in ways she never had before, to risk being hurt if it meant having something real. She said that she was falling in love with Elena, had been falling since that first night in the darkened house when Elena had hovered anxiously behind her talking a mile a minute, and that she was tired of pretending this thing between them was casual when it felt like the most important thing in her life. Her voice was steady, but her hand trembled in Elena's, vulnerability written across every line of her face, and Elena felt something break open in her chest. All the fear and caution she had been clutching so tightly suddenly seeming less important than the woman in front of her, offering her heart. Elena kissed her then, leaning across the space between them and pressing her lips to Jade's. With all the longing she had been holding back for months, Jade made a sound low in her throat and kissed her back, her hand coming up to cup Elena's face with a tenderness that made Elena's eyes sting with unshed tears. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, and Elena whispered that she was falling too, had been falling, and that she was done being scared. She said that she couldn't promise it would be easy, that coming out again as someone in a relationship would mean facing judgment and rejection all over again, but that Jade was worth it, that this thing between them was worth fighting for. Jade smiled then, really smiled, the guardedness melting from her expression, and kissed her again like she was sealing a promise. They took it slow after that night, but with intention, no longer hiding but not rushing either. Jade started staying over on weekends, her clothes gradually migrating into Elena's closet, her toothbrush appearing in the bathroom cup. They went on actual dates, to restaurants in neighboring towns at first, and then, as Elena's courage grew, to places in their own community. Elena felt the stares and heard the whispers, watched potential clients glance at her and Jade's intertwined hands and suddenly remember they had other appointments. But she also discovered something unexpected. For every person who turned away, someone else smiled warmly, offered words of support, shared stories of their own journeys. The world was not as uniformly hostile as her fear had painted it. And while there was still prejudice and rejection, there was also kindness and acceptance in places she hadn't thought to look. Jade met Elena's parents at Thanksgiving despite Elena's anxiety, sitting at the table with her spine straight and her voice steady, while answering their careful questions. Elena's mother was coldly polite, her father uncomfortable and distant, and the meal felt interminable, but Jade never faltered, never apologized for existing or for loving Elena. On the drive home, Elena cried with a mixture of grief and relief, mourning the relationship with her parents she might never have, while feeling grateful beyond words for Jade's steady presence beside her. Jade pulled the car over and held her while she sobbed, and when Elena finally lifted her head, Jade wiped her tears away and told her that family was not just blood, that they would build their own family from the people who loved them for who they really were. If this story has touched your heart in any way, if you believe in the courage it takes to live authentically and love fearlessly, please let us know by liking this video and leaving a comment below. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to channel name so we can continue creating content that celebrates all forms of love. Your engagement truly makes a difference. 6 months later, Elena's business was thriving again with new clients who appreciated her work and didn't care about her personal life. Jade had hired 2 apprentices and was teaching them the trade with the same patience someone had once shown her. They had moved into a new house together, a fixer-upper that Jade was slowly renovating, while Elena chose paint colors and argued lovingly about floor plans. They hosted dinners for the chosen family they had built, a collection of friends and found siblings, who filled their home with laughter and acceptance. Elena's relationship with her parents remained strained but had improved slightly, her mother sending occasional text messages that were stilted but genuine attempts at connection. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, built on a foundation of honesty rather than pretense. Elena often thought back to that Thursday evening when the power went out and changed the trajectory of her entire life. She had been so focused on her presentation, on her career, on maintaining the careful control she had built around her existence. And the universe had intervened. With a circuit breaker, failure, and an electrician with gray eyes who saw straight through all her defenses. Love had arrived not in the way she expected, not when she was ready or looking for it, but exactly when she needed it most, in the form of a woman who understood fear and courage in equal measure. They had both spent so much of their lives feeling unwanted and uncertain, building walls to protect hearts that had been broken too many times, and somehow they had found each other in the darkness and chosen to be brave together. Before we end, please take a moment to comment below and tell us, what did this story mean to you? Have you ever had to choose between hiding your truth and living authentically? Jade was in the backyard now, working on the electrical for the outdoor kitchen they were building, her tool belt slung low exactly as it had been that first night, and Elena stood at the window watching her with a love so fierce it sometimes took her breath away. The evening sun caught in Jade's dark hair, painting everything golden. And Elena thought about how sometimes the most important moments in life come disguised as disasters, how sometimes losing power is exactly what you need to, finally see clearly in the dark. She thought about sparks and circuits and the invisible current that had pulled them together against all odds, and she knew with absolute certainty that this was what happiness felt like, messy and imperfect and real, built by two women who had learned that being seen and loved for who you truly are was worth every risk, every whisper, every moment of fear they had survived to get here.